What's up, guys? This is Sean Tan and welcome to another episode of the Eheng podcast. Today we will talk about something that I'm trained in, which is architecture. So in a lot of I think the previous episodes of property review, right, we witnessed and we documented several different types of buildings, and all of them came in different forms and different layouts and things like that. But ultimately I realized that architecture, right, it's a very big word. Where what does it mean? Architecture sometimes mean facade for some of the people. Architecture sometimes means unit layout. Then sometimes the word means facilities and etc. So today, maybe I will share my point of view of it, of what I think architecture means in the current context. So there's different aspects to architecture. So if you look from a macro point of view, right, it's actually town planning. Town planning needs to be integrated with this thing called land use, or what we call zoning as well. So zoning means the usage of land. For example, a 2,000 acres land, right, is actually dissected into different zones, and you gotta know where's the main highway, what kind of circulation system are you using in terms of traffic, bus, and LRT maybe. Then if it includes water, right, so maybe boats and things like that. So all that needs to be drawn out by a master planner. Then that also integrates with surveyors, and then they will be plugged into, maybe in 2,000 acres, there's 32 pieces of land, and one piece of land is maybe some is 2 acres and some is 30 acres for landed. Then that also needs to be categorized in conjunction with the traffic. So roads are also divided into local roads, secondary roads, primary roads, or highways, because you cannot really direct connect to an highway. In roads, right, there are actually grades to it in accordance to the JKR standard. So what's the width and what's the speed limit for different grades of roads. Then after the master planner crafted out that particular piece of land, right, then in whatever shape and form, based on the concept of the master plan, the architect is then appointed to design the building based on the function. If it's a service apartment, then the developer will need to decide and balance between several things. Number one is the number of units based on built up or based on density. Different places has different calculations of density. Some based on built up, meaning that the amount of maximum built up for this project may be 1 million or 2 million square feet, right? Then it's super high rise lah. Or then it's based on density, meaning number of units. So that's why sometimes you will see condominiums no longer being built, because they are often being restricted based on number of units. So the developer has no way but to finish up the amount of build up, right? Because if not, wasted. So they will try to maximize the number of build ups against the number of units. Therefore, every unit becomes super big. So when every unit is super big, right, then the selling price will be very, very high. That's the issue why you see condos, right, no longer being built in comparison to service apartments. So in service apartments, they can also integrate based on mixed developments. Mixed developments has offices, hotels, malls, retails, and of course the residents. So the architecture in that part, right, is where the drop-off is. A lot of people are not aware, after they buy the project, right, how do you access the project? So there was a colleague just now just asked oh, is this project okay? Then I look at it, oh, it's next to Jalan Kuching, correct. But in context to the Jalan Kuching, right, can the person or can the residents actually access the unit directly from Jalan Kuching? Because Jalan Kuching is a very big road, so can you really just branch out directly into the condo? It doesn't make sense, right? From the highway, it goes through primary, secondary, then to a local road. So the local road, right, might be 3 traffic lights away, one, and that will immediately affect the entrance of the project already. So, and that will affect the price, just like LRT station. So if you're located next to the track, right, no point, one, you gotta be located next to the station. Only it makes sense. So we talked about density, we talked about accessibility. Now we will move into functions. So functions means mixed development and how different functions complement each other, especially for mixed developments or TOD, transit-oriented developments, because the concept of convenience versus security, right, is always either or. It means that the more convenience you want for your residents, then the security will be not so good. Right, so if you want security very high, just like KL Gateway Premium, but then it's very not convenient for residents, especially in transit-oriented development. So sometimes a lot of people they don't want MRT. Just like TDDI, right? They were against MRT stations because once the MRT station is there, it provides accessibility for outsiders to access the locations. So it kind of like compromises the security of the entire neighborhood. So imagine like if your building is directly connected to the LRT or MRT station, then your home, right, is only one gate away. So that also applies to the accessibility in terms of like the entrance to the mall must be different from the offices, must be different from the residents. Then as we go a little bit more micro, we reach the floor layout. So in floor layout, right, as I always mention in every property reviews, is the number of lift against number of units. Moving on will be the corridors. So the width of the corridors, if you notice like some of the projects we mentioned before is like 4 feet. 4 feet is like only 1.2 meters, which is very super narrow. And if you have a family member who is actually using a wheelchair, you can't really turn. So the luxury condos and apartments, right, the difference will be on that width of corridor. Usually it's 2.25 meters, where 2 wheelchairs can actually pass by each other. But slowly, developers are actually appealing to be smaller and things like that. That reached the point, right, that why developers are actually very, very particular about the width of the corridor, and it's not really mentioned in any of the sales pitch. Because the width of corridor, right, is a cost to the developer. In development terms, this is called floor layout efficiency, meaning the net sellable area of a floor layout versus the gross built-up area of the floor layout. Means that in a floor, I built 10,000 square feet of per floor plate, but I can only sell 80 or 70 or 60% of it. It means the unit layout. So what's left is the utility spaces, the corridor, the fire staircase. Those are built by the developer, but they cannot be charged to the residents. So that's why if you look into similar price range products, will have similar layouts. Nothing is going to be fancy or innovative or different from all these unit layouts, right? Because all follow the same formula. They are based on the higher the efficiency, the more money they will make. And all this, right, no matter how they squeeze, needs to be in accordance to our fire regulations. There's a minimum running distance from door to door, meaning if there's a fire, right, there's a minimum running distance from a dead end to the nearest door, then from that door to the nearest keluar signs, etc. Then coming back to the corridors, right, there are 2 types mainly. One is single loaded and one is double loaded. Single loaded, it means one side of the corridor only have units. And for double loaded, then it means that both sides of the corridor have units. So double loaded usually have higher efficiency because more units are using the same amount of area for your corridor. And then if it's a single loaded, right, meaning your corridor actually needs to times 2. So it's less efficient as a floor layout. And then we will reach to the unit layout itself. So for the unit layout, it's rather direct already because you can see all 1 bedrooms almost looks the same, all dual key almost looks the same because all of them are in accordance to the same formula. Then we will reach to the fancy part because these are more driven by marketing and branding and sellability. Meaning like if I tell you all this, right, it will make you buy because the rest is rather basic in terms of accessibility and unit layouts, right? All those are actually fixed. But for this part that is including the facility deck and the form of the building and then the facade. So my question today for you guys to ponder upon, right, is that is facade really that important? To me, as long as it's not ugly, right, as it's not red or pure green or it just looks weird, right, then it's fine because I don't really see the relation of the sub-sale price, right, versus the form of the building. Take Fennel for example. It's not doing excellently because of the zigzagness of the facade. And if you look at Troika, it's designed by international architects, but then the sub-sale price is also But instead, I would look at facade, right? How premium the property is directly reflected on the amount of glass. So the ratio between glass versus total facade area, right, is really reflecting on the atasness or the level of price of the property. It means the more surface area of glass facade that the unit has, the higher the property price is. That's why it's something to really look into. And for atas projects, right, for luxury projects, usually you can see that the whole building, right? For example, Astaka, the whole building is actually glass. Then we come to swimming pool. Like the safe one is swimming pool that is rectangular. So some developers try to be funny and they make into odd shapes. Some make into a lazy river. Then some make into an edgeless pool. Then you can take the horizon. And then some put it on the rooftop. Then some put it right on top of the parking level. Then for common areas, right, gym being the gym, standard one, nothing much that you can do. Then some put in a boxing ring, some put in the rock climbing, some put in cigar room, some put in all fancy one. But to me, how relevant, right, are these to the demand or the decision-making process of you buying the property? Like, will you buy a property just because got jacuzzi? Or will you buy the property just because the swimming pool shape is like an 8? Or you really just prefer the swimming pool need to be like square so I can actually just swim laps to it? These factors, which is the facade and the facilities, is actually the marketing area. Again, there's nothing much that they can do for the units really. So 890 square feet means 890 square feet, 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, you lucky or not. Then you measure against density, then you measure against corridor width, and you measure against whether leasehold or freehold. Nothing much really. But if you look into the facility deck, most of the time, will you buy because there's a sky pool? Does it really matter that you have a sky pool or not? Because the construction cost of a sky pool, right, to put a swimming pool on top of the building, it increases a lot of cost for the entire building. First of all would be the weight of the swimming pool or water on top, right? You already have the water tank on top. Then you need to carry some more weight on top, and you put all the filtration system, etc., and safety features. So all these will be transferred into the structural cost as well. Instead, putting the swimming pool on top of a parking, right? So the parking building, always they put it on top. That's the best. I always see, right? Then it keeps the construction cost very, very affordable and effective. That being said, right, all these are for high rise. But if you look into landed, then you can see very different treatments already. But mostly you can see it's either the stratified living or individual living. So that one is rather direct to compare. But let's come back to high rise living, right? For my friends and audience who is actually living in a high rise building, the depth towards the architecture of the building, it's way more than just facade. And if you really have made your mind for 2 different projects, right, and you really want to think about the comparison, what should you compare besides price? Because if the price is identical, then you can really compare. So the unit size, so the lift to units ratio, then the number of units per floor, then the total number of units, what's the density. Then you look into the facility deck. Then you look into accessibility. Then you look into what's next to your building. Is it responding well to your surrounding? If you go to the sales gallery and the next plot of land are actually like greens, right, better check what is it, because developers has no need to tell you what's next to your building. Manatau is actually cemetery. Manatau is actually PMU, the Tenaga electrical substations, or sometimes it's the water storage area and things like that. You will never know. And do check how do you access your apartment or project. Yes, it's next to Jalan Kuching, but how do you access from Jalan Kuching? Then you turn up here, turn. After 5 junction, only you can reach your apartment. Then there's no point being next to Jalan Kuching. So I think in this discussion for architecture, right, I was inspired after visiting Troika, and you really see the difference between international architects. How do they define space versus local architects that is actually based on more local flavor. So that's the end of this episode, and my question for the day is, what's your consideration, the top 3 consideration before you buy a property besides price? So don't talk about price. So what's your 3 main consideration before buying a property? Let me know below in the comments if you are on YouTube, and if you're on Spotify. Thank you very much for listening. You can reach me in any other platforms. IHERNG is my name, and I think that's all for this episode. If you really like this video, like it, share it, and even subscribe for more episodes like this. Until next time, this is Sean Tan. Ciao.